Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning. Well, you're like, wait, it's the afternoon. What is he talking about? No, when I say good morning, I'm talking about that it's a new morning here in Washington for liberty. This year, the Libertarian Party State Convention here was the most well-attended state convention in the entire country. Not only was the Libertarian Party State Convention the most well-attended, but the Republican Liberty Caucus State Convention was the most well-attended convention in the entire country. Now, before I get started, I want to define a couple of terms so we're all on the same page. Raise your hand if you know what politics means. Okay, we got a couple of people. Raise your hand if you know what a libertarian is. Okay, a few more people. I'm going to go ahead and define politics. When broken down to its simplest form, you have poly, which means multiple, like a polygon, a multiple-sided object, and then you have ticks, which are blood-sucking parasites. So politics essentially is multiple blood-sucking parasites. Now let's break down the word libertarian. You have liber, which is ancient Greek for freedom or liberty, and tarian is believer in, like a vegetarian. They believe in eating vegetables. Libertarians essentially just believe in liberty. Now I look at libertarians as the exterminators coming in to fumigate and get the ticks off the backs of the American people. Now, libertarian's not actually a noun. Libertarian is a verb, just like vegetarian is. If I were to eat meat and called myself a vegetarian, would I be a vegetarian? Of course not. You have to practice it. You actually have to eat only vegetables. And the same thing goes for libertarian. You can't just say you're a libertarian and not do anything to help advance liberty, to protect the liberties, the little liberty that we have left, and to work to take back the liberties that were stolen from us. You see, I was born into a world where I didn't get to choose the laws, the taxes, the regulations, the ordinances. I didn't get to vote on any of it. So one of my main personal missions is to sunset all taxes, all laws, all ordinances so we get to vote on them again. Now, it doesn't mean we're just going to get rid of them. No, let's just put them on the ballot so we could vote on them again. See, our liberties have been stolen from us from previous generations where we didn't have any input whatsoever. So let's start working to take those back, or continue to work to take those back. And we have to start locally. All politics is local. We have to organize in our local communities, but not just that. You know, a lot of people ask, what is the first step to take our liberties back? What's the first step to end the drug war? What's the first step to stop these guys from taxing us to death? Right? What is the first step? And one thing I realized is that the first step to fix all the problems that we have right now is not to pass a piece of legislation. It's not to stop the legislation from being passed. It's to talk to our friends, our families, and our neighbors, to build up our support, to build up the pressure to where we can elect not politicians, but statesmen. There's a big difference between politicians and statesmen. A politician is someone looking to take away our rights, looking to add more laws. And a statesman is there going into office to protect our rights, to take the rights back that have been stolen from us. There's a big difference between a politician and a statesman. When I first got involved in politics, it was in 2007, and I learned about a gentleman named Ron Paul. Who here knows who Ron Paul is? Woo! Ron Paul is a true statesman. He was known as Dr. No in Congress because he voted no so many times. Now, we all have our work cut out for us, the way our country's going right now. There's a booth that I like to call out. The Libertarian Party of Whatcom County is the most active Libertarian Party county organization within the state. If you haven't, please go take the world's smallest political quiz. Get signed up for our email updates. We have some big events coming up and some major speakers coming in from out of town. So please get signed up. Thank you all for coming out. I want to thank Dan O'Donnell for letting us have this event here and putting this event on. And I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Very passionate about the Constitution, very passionate about taking back our rights. He is so passionate about it that he's actually putting his neck on the line. He's putting his neck out there. He's running for office, and his name is Clayton Petrie, and he's running for city council. So would everyone please give a warm round of applause for Clayton?
Hello, my name is Clayton Petrie, and I'm running for City Council, 4th Ward in Bellingham here. It's nice to see freedom lovers here today, and that's one of the reasons why I'm running for the City Council, is because I don't think that the current council believes in the level of freedom that you all here do, that are here today. There's just too many prescriptive votes in Bellingham, and I think we would all benefit from another voice on the council that has a little bit different view than the other 6 people. So that's the main reason why I'm running, is to provide another voice and another viewpoint, somebody that can ask questions when people are jumping on the bandwagon for yet another ban of something, and make a difference for everybody. I think that there's some real opportunities to bring more family wage jobs to Bellingham, and part of that is by good planning. One of the big opportunities we have is the waterfront redevelopment site. There's some areas that I have concern with right now. The first one is the rather large downtown waterfront zoning area proposed. Now, what that zoning will do is it will suck the life out of downtown as people move from downtown to the waterfront area. That land is an industrial cleanup area, and I think that it would better serve us if we use it for the marine trades zoning that we have on some of the other property near there. It's just a real opportunity to attract more living wage job kinds of things to Bellingham. The other thing that's really important to me is protecting neighborhood character. There's nothing wrong with some infill. There's nothing wrong with somebody building another building or house. It's into the character of the existing neighborhood. I just don't think that we need to overdo it. And that's something that I will keep an eye on and help everybody that has a problem with maybe some overzealous infill in their neighborhood. So again, my name is Clayton Petrie. I'm endorsed by the Libertarian Party for this campaign, and I would appreciate your support and your vote in November. I'm running for Ward 4, Clayton Petrie. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Rob Stratton. He's the membership chair for the Libertarian Party of Whatcom County, and a huge advocate for open carry and the Second Amendment. So please give him a warm welcome, Rob Stratton.
The Constitution gives us no rights. It is not a permission slip granting us as Americans with privileges, making us more special than anybody else on this planet. I have no constitutional rights. Neither does anyone else. It is simply a document that spells out the duties and the authority of a government, the shalls and shall nots. This document is based on common law and a common law theories of natural rights. The basics of common law is mens rea. For something to be a crime, you have to have intended to commit that crime. Actus reus. You had to act upon that intention. Also, there has to be a victim. Otherwise, there is no crime. Ignorance is an excuse in common law, unless that law is mal in se, so bad in itself that we can't excuse ourselves in saying we didn't know it was illegal. Things like theft, rape, murder. Also in common law, there's not supposed to be retroactive punishment. You cannot be punished for something illegal today that wasn't illegal last week. How can you have a just or stable society if this is the case? We also don't have the right to incriminate ourselves, or we do have the right under common law to incriminate ourselves. We see that being erased now. This was done in England to combat torture and also false confessions, to make sure that truth was heard in the courtroom. You weren't offered special deals or pleas. Along with this, we have the right of a jury trial. I admit this worked better a couple hundred years ago, the colonial times and in feudalistic England, when the people didn't trust the government, that they just had your best interests at heart. Also, along with this is the right of being judged by your peers. As juries, you have the right to judge not just the person and the crime he committed, but also the law itself, and if the punishment fits the crime, or whether due process was served. Was he brought justly before the court? And along with this was the theories of natural law, and in itself it says that every person has property within his own person. A great expression of this natural law is our Declaration of Independence, where it talks about self-evident truths, like the right to be governed by consent, the right to pursue life, liberty, and happiness, that all men were created equal. The theory of natural law is supposed to have a negative effect on society and on people. What do I mean by negative effect? When you go to a doctor and you take a test for terminal illness, do you want the lab results to come back as negative or positive? Well, this is what natural law theories of justice is supposed to do to society. But why does any of this matter? I know much of my life I was politically apathetic. I didn't know why. I just knew politics sucked. I know I'm not alone in this. When we look at elections, many elections, only 30% of the people show up to vote. I call those ones who don't vote the vote of no confidence. They know it just sucks. They realize there's not much they can do to change it. But Rothbard said true change only comes through education. And this was true in the days of the colonies. They studied Blackstone's commentaries on English law. It was the most popular book in the colonies, from the rich aristocrats to the lowly farmers. They knew their rights. They also studied John Locke and his theories of natural law. They based the structure of their societies from the state level to the federal level on these theories. And for me, when I learned the principles of these theories, it helped me understand. It helped me realize why politics sucked, because I could see what was wrong and I could articulate it. And I think this is what Rothbard meant. Because when society is educated and they know what's wrong and why it's wrong and they can express it, only then can they speak out against it and fight it. But it's not easy. The machinations of the state, their propaganda machines, the statists who love the state above individual liberty, will do everything they can to stop you. And maybe at times that we're discouraged. We feel there's no hope. Nothing will change. People will just continue in this path. At times I feel that way. A few years ago I was feeling that way. My cousin related a story to me. He said when he was down at Fort Lewis in boot camp, they did a drill called move out and draw fire. Thought nothing of it. It was perfectly safe in boot camp. But then he was deployed to Iraq. They came under fire. And his commanding officer told him, "I want you to move out and draw fire." His first reaction was, "What? We really going to do that? Those people are trying to kill us." But he did it because he knew the safety of his fellow soldiers depended upon it. He knew that if he didn't do it, somebody else would be sent, and if they died, he couldn't live with that blood guilt. So it became a mantra for me, a source of motivation, because I realized my small trials and tribulations that I'm facing here is nothing like being shot at or being in battle. And then I realized that history is full of people who moved out and draw fire. One of my favorites is Rosa Parks. She didn't plan on doing what she did. She knew instinctively that her fundamental rights, her common law rights, were being thrashed. They were being violated. She didn't wait for politically connected judges or politicians to change her situation. She stood up and she did something. And in doing so, she facilitated a large change for society. She helped thousands, if not millions of people in this country. And I'm sure that there was others who suffered under the same injustice that she did, that wanted to do what she did, but they didn't because they were afraid of the repercussions. They just wanted to go about their daily lives. They didn't want to be thrown in jail. But let's not be misled. The courts, the government, none of them, politicians, they would have not struck down these laws unless somebody stood up and did something. And the people found out that they weren't alone. That all across America, everyone from all different types of backgrounds supported her. So these politicians in the government who said they passed these laws, they deserve no credit. They would have been content in continuing the injustice. The natural tendency of government is to grow to tyranny. We can see this from the federal government right down to our local governments. We see that jurors are constantly dismissed for knowing about their right to nullify laws. Our right to bear arms is under constant attack. Freedom of speech is under assault, along with how we earn a living, our labor. We have gangs of unconstitutional proactive police that have created, from the federal level down to the local level, the standing army that the founding fathers warned us would be the greatest threat to our liberty. We have positive law that has replaced natural law and common law. We see that the state likes to enforce malum prohibitum laws, or laws that are bad just because someone voted it in or because they said so. We can only change these things by our outrage, by our questioning so-called authority, by our educating ourselves and others on the proper place of government. We are the masters, not them. Article 1, Section 1 of our state constitution is based on common and natural law, and it states, all political power is inherent in the people, and governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed and are established to protect and maintain individual rights. You can't get much clearer than that. So we must view it as an us versus them. We can't fall for the lies of these politicians that we can trust the government because we are the government. Because I'm sure I'm not alone in saying I am not killing innocent children with drones overseas. I'm not listening in on your phone calls and reading your emails. I'm not stealing your money to give it to other people for causes you personally might find repugnant. I'm not throwing people in jail and ruining their lives for personal vices. I'm not kicking in your door, killing you, your loved ones, or your pets with no unconstitutional no-knock warrants. I'm not destroying liberty and a misguided allegiance to the state for an illusion of safety. I'm not destroying liberty by pitting people one against each other, making classes in society. You are this, you are that. No, we are all individuals. The law is supposed to be a shield against tyrannical government. Unjust laws are no laws at all. Unconstitutional laws are null and void. Like the law that treated Rosa Parks as if she was less human than the rest of her community. So at the beginning I mentioned that the Constitution grants us no rights. I still like the Constitution because it's supposed to be a restriction on government. The Bill of Rights is my favorite part of it. It was insisted upon by the anti-federalists who didn't trust the writers of the Constitution to remain within the enumerated powers of the Constitution. And notice how the politicians never talk about the 9th Amendment. This is the one that says our rights cannot be numbered. So we must ask ourselves, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do to protect our rights? Well, I say we do something, do anything. Pick a fight and fight for it, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. It all adds up. Whether you can run for office or all you can do is put a bumper sticker on the back of your car. Demand respect from your politicians. They are not your leaders. You are not sheep. You are not property to be led about to your slaughter. Be prepared to move out and draw fire, like the radical founding fathers, like Rosa Parks, who insisted that their common law and natural rights be respected. You know, sadly, my cousin ended his life not too long ago. And at his funeral, I related the encouragement I had received from him to my other cousin, his brother, who served with him in Iraq. And he said, you know what the best part of moving out and draw fire was? It was the faith that all those behind you that you were standing up for was going to wreak utter havoc upon anybody who dared try to harm you. Can we do that for each other? If we have this attitude for each other, we will win. We must fight for all rights, even those that we don't find personally appealing. Use our voices, use our words, use our protests, our votes to wreak havoc upon these horrible laws and these politicians who are infringing upon our liberties and our natural common law rights. We must be willing not only to move out and draw fire, but take a stand with those willing to do so. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Alan Brown, who's running for City Council at large.
Thank you. I'm really proud to be here today and proud to have the support of the Whatcom Libertarians. I'm going to start out by telling you a little bit about myself and my first civics lesson. When I was a child, I got to hang out with some very, very, very important people. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Jack Dempsey. If you haven't heard of him, ask the old people, they'll tell you. He was a world heavyweight boxing champion back in the 1920s. He was also a war hero. He served with my father in New York and in the North Atlantic as a lieutenant commander in the United States Coast Guard. But what I got to do with Jack Dempsey and with my dad was to hang out at his restaurant in Manhattan. Jack Dempsey owned Jack Dempsey's Broadway restaurant. I got to know people like Cesar Romero, another war hero, Audie Murphy, a Congressional Medal of Honor winner, who certainly put himself out there and drew fire. Those people taught me about the United States, about our Constitution, about our values, and I think I have mimicked those my entire life. My dad was a war hero from the North Atlantic in the Coast Guard at the time, and afterwards he was the commander of his Veterans of Foreign Wars post. During that time, he got to sponsor a high school speech project called the Voice of America. I could never participate in the contest because of the conflict of interest with my dad. But I would always ask him, well, Dad, what should I write? What should I write for my Voice of America speech? And he just looked at me and said, Alan, just read the Constitution. That's all you need. Whenever you get lost, whenever you get unsure of your decisions, read the Constitution. There's a lot of discussion these days about whether or not the Constitution and the Bill of Rights are important. We are not a homogeneous society. We are not of one religion. We don't have an extensive history as a people. But the only thing that binds us, the only thing that holds us together is that document. It enshrines the principle that government exists to protect the rights of citizens. When we have failed to do that, it is because our failure to respect the equality of all, when we have strayed from the document. During times that we have strayed from the constitutional principle, when our public officials fail to respect just limits on power, when they fail to respect our constitutional guarantees of individual liberty, limited government, and federalism. Federalism is defined as the fact that we must trust the people in the states to govern themselves. The federal government exists to produce currency, for national defense, and to build roads. Our government should not be making cars. I'm sure they're not doing a very good job of it. It's not their place. They shouldn't be setting curricula in our schools. It's not their place. The core curriculum is in the news now. Let me tell you about my experience with the core curriculum, because I was in school when Federal Title I went into effect. Federal Title I was a dumbing down of America that I will never forget. It was one day we were reading Chaucer and Shakespeare and Ben Franklin, and the next day we were being patted on the back and asked how we felt. Government, by its nature, stifles creativity and entrepreneurial spirit. The way to restore our respect for constitutional principle is not to hold it up as a source of power, but to recognize that its power is derived, that it is pre-existing and not inherent in the document. The Constitution is a reflection of our inherent rights, whether it be to the deity as spoken of in the Declaration, the light of liberty that exists in our hearts, or to the findings of common laws Rob was speaking about. In democracy in America, Alexis de Tocqueville writes, "How can those who have given up the habit of self-government successfully choose those who shall exercise it for them?" Our life, liberty, happiness, rights, and freedom are now defined in human terms and now seem to be as dependent on as found in the state. That is why the Constitution is important, not because of what it is, but because of who it points to. It points to the reluctant citizen. It points to we the people. 2 days ago, we celebrated our forefathers' victory over tyranny and oppression. We waved our flags. In my neighborhood, we blew off some rockin' fireworks. And next year, we're going to be blowing off some rockin' fireworks. And we listened to patriotic music and cheered our freedom. I took part in the festivities, not being a hypocrite, thinking that our freedoms were already lost, but recognizing that freedom is more than just an idea. It is akin to a precious commodity, something that has been temporarily absconded with. It's time to take it back. We are being recorded, observed, fined, and imprisoned and chastised for growing a simple plant or utilizing water to grow Whatcom County blueberries and feed our families. We are being maligned for exercising our rights under the Second Amendment, which makes all other amendments possible. We know what Charleston Heston said about that. Government oligarchs are spending our tax money, appropriated from hardworking people. If you look at the Bellingham budget, which I'm certainly concerned with running for this position, you will find it rife with federal handouts. There are taxes on everything that you do, buy, sell, or earn. They confiscate it, and then they make you beg to get a piece of it back. And when you get the piece back, that piece comes with a 47% loan attached to it. And why? So that government can grow, so that government elites can sit up on high and make us dependent instead of self-determined, as is our history and destiny. I called myself, if you ever see my Herald article, which they haven't printed, I called myself a reluctant citizen. Everybody told me not to use the word reluctant. I never thought that I had the moral imperative to guide anyone. I thought that in our republic, democracy would make citizens their own stewards. I had no interest in being politically active. But it is my duty as an active citizen to stand up when that commodity of freedom and liberty is being taken away. I have to do this as a citizen, as a response to people being evil, as a response to oligarchs like Mayor Michael Bloomberg trying to protect us from ourselves, or as a response to those who are trying to replace our individual self-determination with a nanny state. Citizens should step in when things are going badly. They should absolutely step in. When things are going well, only the people who are about loving politics should step in. I'm not going to be there. It'll be somebody else. I, like many others, are engaged in politics only reluctantly, and only to win back that commodity of freedom and then to disengage. The definition of a republic is a state in which sovereign power is invested in representatives, chosen by the people to govern. And government is the people. And it is from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people. When I was in Paris last year, I visited the Café Procope. I sat there drinking coffee and thinking about Benjamin Franklin. He was fashioning his thoughts several hundred years ago, fashioning the history of our country. He said this: "They that can give up essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." Thank you. I hope you vote for me in August.
Thank you, Alan. Up next, and before I introduce the next speaker, remember, guys, we have a barbecue over here. You're welcome to throw stuff on it. There may even be a few burgers left over there, and we have a beer garden going on too, so, dig in. Up next, we have Tina Sorensen, and you are the Vice Chair, of the Whatcom Libertarians. So let's give a warm welcome.
Hi there. Wow. Thanks, Dan, for hosting. Thanks for the nice weather. This is great. Whoever we may be thanking. I have a quote here. The government was set to protect man from criminals, and the Constitution was written to protect man from the government. Ayn Rand said that. And I totally believe that wholeheartedly. I'm a libertarian, and as Dan mentioned, I'm the vice chairwoman of the Whatcom County Libertarian Group. So our table is just over there. Feel free to peruse and come talk to us about any concerns you have. I believe that the government is completely out of control right now. I think we need to get our power back. Remember that we don't ask permission. We don't need to ask permission to do things from our government. They need our support and our permission. A little underprepared here. I got plenty of time, okay. Well, yes, so there's a lot of stuff going on politically in the world right now. Edward Snowden, I'm sure you guys have heard about him, leaked out a bunch of information about the NSA spying on everyone all over the world. And some people say that he's a traitor and that he should be tried for espionage. But like Rosa Parks, he also felt that the government has been infringing on every one of the citizens of this world and needed to draw attention to that and leak that out. And we need to protect these whistleblowers like Bradley Manning. We need to protect Assange. We need to protect Schwartz, unfortunately, is no longer with us. These people stuck their necks out because they didn't think that the government had the right to have their power over us, have their hand over everything that we say, everything that we do. And it's time that we rein them back in. And oh, by the way, on the 4th, the NSA did not object to peaceful protests by the people. Well, that's nice that they gave us permission to protest. That's bullshit. We have the right to do that. The government does not give us permission to do things. Anyway, I am a libertarian. Long live libertarianism. Come join us over there. Oh, and I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Wyland Choker.
Good afternoon. I'm Wyland Choker, and in case you're wondering why I'm wearing this, I belong to a couple of living history groups, and one of them is the 2nd Connecticut Regiment, and they reenact the American War for Independence, Revolutionary War. And in that unit, I serve as their chaplain. Now, I'm not a chaplain in real life, but I am a chaplain in my heart, which is where it really matters. So, I wrote this speech this morning. I haven't had a chance to read it through yet, so I'll have to read it from here a little bit. I'm sorry about that. I'm one of those that waits till the last minute. I've always been very interested in the study of the concept of human freedom, especially where it comes from, and how it was established and how it is defended. I've been involved in politics in a supporting role since 1996, done a lot of different things politically. And I tell you that to provide context for the rest of what I'm going to say. You know, you hear people talk about conspiracy theories, and we're always very skeptical of that, of course. But what we are facing in this nation right now is not a conspiracy theory. Rather than a theory, it's fact. And rather than conspiracy, it is tyranny. There's no other word for it. So I won't elaborate so much on the terrible things that are happening to our citizens in this country. I want to approach this from a different angle. Let me illustrate how I experience what is happening to our country. It's like I'm in a tall building in a city, and I hear screams from the street below, and I rush to the window, and I look down there, and there's some lady being assaulted by a gang of thugs. And it looks like she's being raped and murdered in the street. And I'm very concerned about this. So I'm rushing through the hallways of the building and going down there to help her. And I meet people in the building. And I say, this terrible thing is happening. We've got to go help this lady. But the response I get, it's like a nightmare. The response I get is, well, we don't want to get involved, because we might have to appear in court, and we don't want to get hurt. And I'm shocked by this, so I run further on, and it gets stranger. I find people of my own political party. I happen to be a Republican, and I don't mean to lambaste the Republican Party, don't get me wrong, but even people in my own party who tend to be more fiscal-only conservatives, you know, they say, don't say that, you'll embarrass us, and you'll scare people away from our big tent, and you'll upset the camels in the tent. But even stranger than that, and what really tears at my heart, is on the way to running to help that lady, I run past a church. And remember, I'm a chaplain. I run past a church, and they don't want to get involved. If we say anything, it might affect our tax-exempt status. It might offend some people in our congregation, and they might leave. And, you know, we're supposed to submit to the governing authorities, right? And render to Caesar what is Caesar, what is Caesar's. Well, this is true. But they don't understand. And they say, well, we're supposed to be about the gospel of Jesus Christ and about doctrine. I understand that. But that gospel has results. And one of those results is protecting innocent people who are assaulted, even when those assaulting them happen to be our own government. So that really tears at my heart. You know, I remember a parable of Jesus. He talks about the Good Samaritan. There's a guy traveling on the road from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he was attacked by thieves. And they beat him up and left him for dead in the ditch and robbed him. And then along that same road comes a Levite, and the Levite looks at him and thinks, well, I don't want to help him. The thieves might attack me. So he passes by on the other side. And a priest comes and looks at him and has pretty much the same reaction. I don't want to get involved. I might get my hands dirty, and it might endanger me. But then later, a Samaritan, a non-religious person, so to speak, comes, and he shows compassion on him and helps him. He was a patriot. What I fear is that the church, which is supposed to be salt and light in this world, has abandoned that responsibility. This is not the way it used to be. In the colonies, before the American Revolution, every concept that was established in that revolution was preached from the pulpits previously throughout all of the colonies. It was the preachers who called for that revolution. And the British rightly considered them to be guilty of fomenting the revolution. They had a saying, they said, "Our American cousin hath run off with a Presbyterian parson." And this was very true. The chaplains in the Continental Forces, in the American Army of the Revolution, were vitally important. George Washington was very intent on having chaplains in every unit. But what I see and what concerns me greatly is that Christianity has degraded into what I refer to as selfianity, a religion that is most concerned with protecting the self. And if that means protecting their own little church or little group from persecution or criticism from society or from government, they'll do it because they want to protect themselves when they should be protecting their neighbors, their countrymen. And I'm reminded of a verse in the book of Proverbs in the Bible. And I think of this when I speak with those religious people. And that verse is, quote, "If thou forbear to deliver them that are drawn unto death, and those that are ready to be slain. If thou sayest, Behold, we knew it not, doth not he that pondereth the heart consider it? And he that keepeth thy soul, doth he not know it? And shall he not render unto every man according to his works?" You know, we conservatives, we tend to blame the left, the socialists, for all the problems, especially those who wield power in government. But you know, I often think of the left and those who do things to us in government. It is like they are like mindless fire burning down your neighbor's house. But if your neighbor's house is burning down, you call the fire department, and the fire department comes, but they just stay in their trucks and play cards, or maybe hose each other down, or maybe break out the marshmallows and start roasting marshmallows at the fire, then you've got a different problem. And it's not with the fire, it's with the firemen. You know, we need to meet our real enemy. Like Pogo said, we have met the enemy, and he is us. There is a quote with which many of you, I'm sure, are familiar. I'll read that at this time. Little introduction. The average age of the world's greatest civilizations from the beginning of history has been about 200 years. During those 200 years, these nations always progressed through the following sequence: from bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to great courage, from courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance, from abundance to complacency, from complacency to apathy, from apathy to dependence, and from dependence back into bondage. Where do we appear on that progression? Dependence and bondage. What we need is to go full cycle and begin again that great spiritual faith. We have a famine of courage in this land. We've got everybody starving to death in a concentration camp of fear known as political correctness. And it is this same soul-killing fear that silences and compromises and corrupts our elected representatives and defeats our nation's citizens also. The same fear that corrupts our politicians is the same fear that causes our citizens to not even register to vote or get involved at all or do anything to help their neighbor or defend their neighbor. It is the same fear. We tend to be critical of our elected representatives, and that criticism is greatly justified. We all know that. but we've got the same problem. It's the fear that causes you to keep your mouth shut in the presence of those who are promoting big government, or even just among your friends. The same fear and defeat and apathy that causes people who should know better to just give up and do nothing. So let's cut to the quick here. What is to be done? What is the answer? How will our beloved countrymen ever break out of this concentration camp of fear and be released from the chains that bind them? And at this point, I must say I'm very sorry to disappoint some, but in honest truth, I must tell you that you cannot achieve the restoration of American freedom through purely political means. And I say that as a very seasoned political person. For our politics are the direct result of our culture. The culture must first be resurrected out of the slough of self-centeredness, apathy, big government drug dependency, and despair and defeat. The people must be liberated in their hearts before they can ever attain liberty on the outside. They must be liberated from the real tyrant who keeps them in bondage through fear. They must be liberated from their very own slavish selves. The people must be inspired to care about others, about ideals greater and more important than themselves. The hearts of the fathers must be turned to their children, the children to their fathers, husbands to their wives, wives to their husbands, neighbors to their countrymen. The only way in which that can happen, the only way in which that has been accomplished throughout history, and to list just a few examples: the first century persecution of the Roman government against Christians, Runnymede and the Magna Carta in England, the Reformation in Europe, the Pilgrims, the English Civil War, the Great Migration from England during the 11 Years' tyranny to these shores, to New England, in which over 20,000 Englishmen escaped persecution in England and came here and established what then became New England, the hotbed of the American Revolution in later years. Most significantly for our founding fathers, the Great Awakening of the 1740s, a religious awakening of the people, which caused to occur exactly the thing I'm talking about here. And it paved the way for the War of Independence. That war could not have happened without it. There would not have been the courage to fight it. But the only way for this powerful thing to happen is for God Himself to change the hearts of the people. Is for God to turn the hearts of us prodigal sons to Himself, especially the hearts of the religious people, the hearts of the real sinners. For unto whom much has been given, for unto those to whom much has been given, from them much is required. We must return to the God of our forefathers. Why try to reinvent the wheel? We must return to the real source of courage that enlivened the hearts of the American patriots. Our people, our nation, desperately needs a miracle of truth, a miracle of selflessness, a miracle of courage, a miracle that only God can provide. This great and foundational miracle is attained by the simplest of means. This is not complicated. One only has to ask for it. Again, from the Bible, quote, "If my people, who are called by my name, will humble themselves, turn from their wicked ways, and pray, then I will hear from heaven, I will forgive their sins, and I will heal their land." Courage. The courage to restore freedom in this land does not come from nowhere. You can't just gin it up out of your self-centered human will. It is not the product of anger or self-interest. It proceeds rather from the true source of freedom to which it is unfailingly loyal, and it is deployed not to exalt the self, but in self-sacrifice for others, for our neighbors, our countrymen. And now I'm going to do one of the more outrageously politically incorrect things that is ever done in this nation of slavish fear and subservience to man, to government. I'm going to do a thing that is strictly banned by government powers in our public school graduation ceremonies and university commencements. I'm going to do it because God in His Bible tells us that we ought to obey God rather than men. I'm going to pray. And if God moves you to join with me in prayer, by all means do it. But understand that you don't have to join me. You don't have to listen. You don't even have to be quiet. No one is going to go crying to some ACLU lawyer if you don't pray. No religious police are going to wrestle you to the ground and beat you like they do in Iran. No government agency is going to target you for persecution because you don't pray. For in America, you are to be free. And in that regard, I'll read something from the Bill of Rights, actually the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights, because it bears directly on this issue. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the people, peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So if you will, I will pray, and you can join with me if you want. Dear Heavenly Father, Maker of heaven and earth, save our nation. Work in the hearts of our people. Turn them from themselves. Turn them to you. Bring us prodigal sons home. Put love in our hearts for our neighbors, our countrymen. Restore us. Restore us to yourself. Restore us to each other. Turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers. Hearts of husbands to wives and wives to husbands, and neighbors to their countrymen. Put into our hearts, Lord, the courage that only comes from you. The courage to stand, the courage to speak, the courage to do good things for our country, for our neighbors. Lord, forgive our sins. We've turned our back on you as a nation. Lord, move our hearts and bring us home. In the name of thy beloved Son, Jesus, I pray. Amen. Thank you.
It's on.
It is on, okay.
Are you awake out there?
Yeah.
Are you awake out there?
Yeah.
You're mighty quiet.
All right.
What's going on?
Not much.
Got any liberty? What do you have to do to get liberty?
Just show up.
Just show up. Where do you have to show up?
Everywhere.
I want to share a little something that I don't know how many of you are aware of it. Your Bellingham City Council, on July 15th, they might restrict you even a little bit more. They want to increase the noise ordinance. You know, lawn mowing, working in your yard outside. Right now you have the right from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. to work in your yard, 7 days a week. Well, you have a couple of council members there that would like to restrict it to 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. on the weekends. How do you like that? You ever going to get to mow your lawn in the cool of the evening? Serious? I am dead serious. How about those street calming devices? You like those? You know, the bumps? The thump, the thump, the thump, the thump. They want to put those on your arterials. It's time for people to start showing up, folks. The people in the city of Bellingham have given up. You're falling asleep. It's time for you, when somebody tells you that the Aquatic Invasive Species Act was necessary, when they tell you how great the program's going, that everybody's receiving it really well, and the city of Bellingham has now made $60,000 already. They've already met their quota. But they didn't say how many aquatic invasive species they found.
How many?
0. So, Carl, where should they show up?
Everywhere. At your county council meetings, your city council meetings, everywhere you can. They can't represent you if they don't know you exist. Yeah, I read on a blog the other day that government is taking our rights and selling them back to us as permits. How do you like that?
How many of you ever heard of NPDES, the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System? That's coming in December 31st of 2016. You know what that means? That means if you have an undeveloped piece of property, or if you want to do an addition of impervious surface to your lot, doesn't matter what size your lot is, you first have to have it engineered, permitted, and constructed to infiltrate the stormwater runoff in your yard before you can get a permit to do your project. What are those going to cost you? Probably between $20,000 and up. It's time to show up, folks. These things are coming down the pike.
Just show up.
Say it loud.
Just show up. Show up at your council meetings, city council, county council, at the ballot box. Make your feelings known. Let people know what you think. Run for office. If you really want to show up, run for office, because, you know, one in the council is probably worth about 200 in the bush.
Anyway, thank you, and I'm glad that you're all here. Share what you learned today, talk to people, and at the very least, please just show up.
Where can you find out the dates and times of these meetings?
The Bellingham City Council always meets on Monday. They just met last Monday, July 1st. You type into your Google, Bellingham City Council materials, you'll find their agenda right there. It's usually on board probably about 3 or 4 days before they have a meeting. Same thing in the Whatcom County Council. Their agenda is always online, Whatcom County Council agenda. They'll be meeting this Tuesday, July 9th. During the afternoon, of course, a lot of people work. That's when the most interesting things happen, when they have their committee meetings, when nobody else can show up. That's right. Your farmers need your support. They'd like to be able to do agricultural slaughtering out on their farms, but they're being underrepresented by the people and letting them know that this is something that they want. It should be a natural, sustainable right to be able to, if you want to do a value added, if you're a beef or a sheep or a whatever type of, animal farmer, you should be able to harvest it on your property just like a berry farmer can, or corn or whatever. So I would really appreciate that if you guys get out there and really, if everybody supports each other, it's going to make a big difference. And that's going to take showing up. Your gun rights, you got to show up. It isn't just about guns, it's about all of it, folks. Thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm Jason Reimer, just a local passerby, so to speak. I thought I'd stop and say something that was just kind of on my mind spontaneously here. I don't know how good it'll be, but thought I'd talk about the Code of Honor and the commonality we all share. It wasn't too long ago that we had a serious international incident in the streets of a place called Benghazi. And getting the information out has been tough. It's been bits and pieces here and there, trying to find out what really went on there. And the one thing that seems to have come to my mind is, or to my realization, is that the only place you could make an issue orders was from the very top. And with having live drone feeds and things of that nature going into the White House or the Situation Room or countless other military places, the one I'm most concerned about is the one that went to the Commander-in-Chief. I think we have a most serious situation here where we have a commander, whether he personally ordered it or issued commands to someone else to make these orders, but there was a stand-down order given apparently. And when we're talking about our common code of honor that we all share as Americans, the moral authority to lead is based on our code. We have to have accountability over this. There has to be a hearing, there has to be trials, there has to be something, and it has to happen immediately. Because if we're going to go after a guy like Edward Snowden, who in the vacuum of leadership, it is understandable that if he's high enough up in his experience to understand and witness or figure out from reliable sources that the code of honor has been broken at our highest level, then his actions are totally understandable, in my opinion. Right or wrong, imperfect as they are, as scary as they are, as hard to imagine as they are, we have a vacuum of leadership that has to be held to account immediately, in my opinion. We have to know whether there's innocence, guilt, who, what, where, when, or we have affected our whole country, all of us. What ties us together is our commonality of the right to self-defense and the protection of each other. So that was on my heart today. I hope it made sense. I think we need to call for immediate arrest, trials, whatever is necessary until we have answers. If they want to plead national security or whatever, let them explain it to people who have security clearances. But let's hear about this immediately, because this type, if this is left to stand, we won't know who we can trust amongst us at any time. Right? Is Edward Snowden a hero? Is he a traitor? Is he something in the middle? How do we decide? And who do we trust? Thank you.